Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring something really fascinating in the wine world, appassimento.
That's right, a technique behind some truly standout wines. We've got a lot of great info lined up.
We do. We're going from the basics right through to the real details that make it special.
So, appassimento
Yeah.
comes from the Italian appassire, which means, to wither or dry.
To dry. Okay.
And it's essentially about controlled dehydration of grapes after they've been picked.
Controlled being the key word there, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's deliberate. They have a very clear goal.
And it's not just about making sweeter wine, is it? I mean, that's part of it, but
No, not at all. Concentrating sugars is definitely one outcome, but it's much more than that.
right, it's like intensifying everything.
Exactly. The sugars, yes, but also the acids for balance, the aromas, the compounds that build structure, even how long the wine can age. It's this ancient art form, really.
Okay, so today we're going to cover the definition, its history, the methods they use.
And where it's done. Italy, of course, but elsewhere in Europe too, and even the New World.
Plus the grapes themselves, the winemaking specifics, what these wines actually taste like.
And food pairings. Can't forget those.
Definitely not. And maybe a look at the market side too. So our goal is to really distill this down for you, give you the core insights without, getting lost in the weeds.
Sounds good.
So to kick us off, what's the absolute fundamental principle? What are winemakers really trying to achieve with appassimento?
Concentration. That's the word. Drying the grapes after picking reduces the water content. Simple as that, mechanically.
Less water means more of everything else.
Precisely. You get higher concentrations of all the good stuff inside the grape. Sugars, obviously, which means more potential alcohol, or maybe some residual sweetness if you stop fermentation early.
Yeah.
Then you have the organic acids, tartaric, malic. They get concentrated too. Vital for balance later on.
Right, you don't want it flabby.
Exactly. Tannins, too. The structural bits, especially in reds, they become more intense. And maybe most importantly, the aromas, the flavor precursors, all those soluble solids, they just become much more potent.
So the initial juice is just fundamentally different?
Completely. It's denser, way more complex than juice from fresh grapes.
It's like grape essence, almost. But you said it's more than just concentration, there's a transformation happening.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Appassimento isn't just amplifying, it's acting like a catalyst. It helps generate unique characteristics you just wouldn't find otherwise.
Such as?
Well, the potential for higher alcohol, as we mentioned, a much denser body, more structure in the wine, and those really intense, deep aroma and flavor profiles that are hallmarks of these wines.
And the sweetness.
Depending on the choices made, yes, you can get that lovely residual sweetness, perfectly balanced. And crucially, because you've concentrated the tannins and other phenolics.
Those are the compounds for color, texture, antioxidants.
Right. Because those are concentrated, the wines often have amazing aging potential. They can evolve for years, decades even, developing incredible complexity in the bottle.
Like drying fruit, it changes the texture and flavor intensity. Makes sense. Now, this sounds old. Where did it all begin?
Oh, it's ancient. Really deep roots. It was probably used partly for preservation, making the harvest last longer, but also to make richer, more stable wines. This was way before modern tech.
So simpler methods back then? Sun drying, maybe?
Probably. Laying grapes out in the sun or maybe in airy, ventilated spots. Basic stuff.
But effective, presumably.
Very. That higher sugar concentration helped fermentation along, made it more reliable, and the higher alcohol acted as a natural preservative. Super important before things like sulfur dioxide were common.
So it wasn't just about taste, it was practical, making wines that could last, that could be traded.
Exactly. It was a strategy for durability as much as flavor enhancement.
Fascinating. Okay, so how did this ancient idea evolve? What are the main ways they do appassimento today?
Well, today you see this mix of tradition and technology. One of the oldest ways is secagem em misteros, drying on mats.
Right, like in Veneto for Amarone.
Precisely. Veneto, Sicily, they still do it. Grapes are hand-picked, laid carefully on mats, straw, bamboo, wood, sometimes special plastic crates with holes.
And where do they put these mats?
In well-ventilated places, cool attics, airy barns, protected from direct sun and too much humidity. The key is controlling airflow and moisture to stop mold and get slow, even drying.
Sounds very hands-on. Must take up a lot of space, too.
It does, which leads to a more modern approach. Secagem in racks, drying on racks.
Vertical racks?
Yeah, structures with shelves for stacking the crates of grapes, much more space efficient. And it helps airflow between the crates, promoting even drying. Practical, efficient.
Makes sense. What about leaving the grapes on the vine to dry? I've heard about that.
Secagem appropriate videra, or passorelage, that's different. It happens in regions with really specific climates. Dry, sunny autumns are a must.
How does that work?
They leave the grapes hanging after they're ripe. Sometimes they'll twist the little stem connecting the bunch or even cut the branch to stop the sap flow, so the grapes dehydrate right there on the vine.
Risky, though, weather-wise.
It's hugely dependent on the weather. Rain or high humidity, big risk of fungal diseases. But if it works, the wines can have really unique, concentrated characteristics, a real gamble.
Wow, so that covers the more traditional and nature-dependent methods. What about bringing technology into it?
That's ambientes controlados, or controlled environments. This is the modern high-precision approach.
So special drying rooms.
Exactly. Facilities where they can manage temperature, humidity, ventilation with advanced systems. It dramatically cuts the risk of rot and gives much more consistent, predictable results no matter what the weather's doing outside.
So tradition meets science.
Pretty much. It's blending the old knowledge with modern precision.
Okay, so we have these different drying methods, but what are the other crucial factors deciding how well this all works and what the final wine is like? It can't just be the drying technique itself.
No, definitely not. Several things are critical. First up, the grape variety, variedad de uva.
Some grapes handle drying better than others.
Absolutely. You want grapes with thick skins, ideally. They resist water loss better, resist mold better, and they're usually richer in those important phenolics, tannins, and color compounds.
Okay, thick skins. What else?
Good natural acidity. Crucial for balance, especially if the wine ends up sweet, keeps it fresh.
Right. And the bunch itself?
Cluster structure matters. Looser bunches mean better airflow around the berries, less risk of rot, more even drying.
Makes sense.
And of course, the grape needs the potential to develop complex flavors during this process. Some varieties just take to it better.
Can you give some examples? We'll touch on more later, but just briefly.
Sure. Reds like Corvina from Valpolicella or Nebbiolo. Whites like Garganega or Zibibbo. They have these characteristics.
Got it. Thick skins, good acid, loose bunches, flavor potential. What's next?
Clima y munad, climate and humidity. You sort of touched on this. During drying, you ideally want dry conditions, good air circulation.
To help water evaporate and keep mold away.
Exactly. Controlling humidity is key. This is where those controlled indoor environments really have an advantage over traditional outdoor attic drying, which is more weather dependent.
Right, and the length of time they dry the grapes. Tempo de secagem, that must be huge.
Immense difference. It varies wildly weeks, sometimes months. Depends on the grape, the conditions, the style of wine they want.
Longer drying means?
Higher concentration of everything, sugars, acids, aromas. Leads to fuller-bodied wines, often sweeter, definitely more complex.
And shorter drying.
Might be the goal if you want less residual sugar, maybe a fresher aromatic style. Winemakers have to monitor the weight loss carefully to know exactly when to stop.
A real balancing act. And finally, the actual storage conditions during drying.
Condições de armazenamento.
Vital. You need uniform drying, and you absolutely have to prevent spoilage. Temperature needs to be right, not too warm to start fermentation, not so dry it desiccates too fast.
Humidity control again. Crucial. And constant ventilation to whisk away moisture and ensure even drying everywhere. How they're stored mats, crates, hanging it all impacts the final result.
It sounds incredibly meticulous, but also like there's a lot that could go wrong. What are the biggest headaches, the main challenges?
You're right. It's definitely not straightforward. The number one challenge is risco de podridão, the risk of rot.
Mostly that botrytis fungus.
Often, yes, the undesirable gray rot form, but other microorganisms too. Those drying grapes, full of sugar, are just perfect breeding grounds if humidity and ventilation aren't spot on.
So how do they fight it?
Starts in the vineyard, rigorous selection, only perfectly healthy bunches. Then, during drying, constant airflow is critical. Fans, careful spacing of bunches, monitor humidity constantly, inspect grapes regularly, remove anything suspect immediately.
Because if it takes hold,
it can wipe out a significant portion of the crop, even all of it. It's a massive risk.
Wow. Okay, what's another big challenge?
Perda de peso y rendimiento, weight loss and reduced yield. It's unavoidable.
Because the water evaporates.
Right. You concentrate the solids, which is the goal, but you drastically reduce the volume of juice you get from each kilo of fresh grapes. Weight loss can easily be over 50%.
50%. So you need way more grapes to make the same amount of wine.
Exactly. Which directly impacts production cost per bottle. It's a constant balancing act for producers get the concentration they want, but keep yields high enough to be economically viable.
Which leads directly to the third challenge, I suppose.
Yes. Custos de producción elevados. High production costs. It's inherently more expensive.
Why specifically?
It's very labor-intensive, all that manual selection, arranging the grapes, monitoring, sometimes turning bunches by hand. Plus, the infrastructure needed, those ventilated rooms or climate-controlled facilities aren't cheap.
And the time involved?
Longer production cycle, too. Capital is tied up for longer while the grapes dry. It all adds up.
So the final wines often cost more.
They often do, but it's usually justified by the sheer complexity, intensity, and uniqueness of the wine. The quality commands a higher price.
Okay, rot risk, yield loss, high costs, definitely a demanding technique. Let's shift gears now and talk about where this magic happens. Italy is ground zero, right?
Absolutely. Italy is the heartland, and Valpolicella in the Veneto region is probably the most famous postcode for Apassimento.
Home of Amarone.
The iconic Amarone della Valpolicella, made mainly from Corvina, Corvinone, and Rondinella grapes, hand-picked, dried on those bamboo racks, the arly.
In special rooms, the frutai.
Exactly. For 3, maybe 4 months. Then that super concentrated must ferments very slowly, usually right down to dryness or close to it.
Resulting in a big, powerful wine.
Big, dry, potent, often over 14% alcohol. Deep ruby color, aromas of dried plum, raisin, sweet spice, maybe some bitter chocolate, tobacco. Powerful structure but smooth, silky tannins. Long finish. Ages beautifully.
Amarone, impressive stuff. But Valpolicella also does a sweet Apassimento wine, doesn't it?
Yes, Recioto della Valpolicella.
Yeah.
Same grapes, same drying process. But, and this is key, they stop the fermentation early.
To keep the natural grape sugars.
Exactly. Preserves that sweetness. So you get this intense ruby wine, smelling of dried figs, dates, cinnamon, clove. Rich, sweet palate, but balanced by acidity. Silky texture, long finish, a classic dessert wine.
So Amarone's dry, Recioto is sweet from the same basic process. What about Ripasso? Where does that fit?
Ah, Ripasso is clever.
Ah.
You take a standard Valpolicella wine, the basic stuff, and you re-ferment it on the leftover skins and seeds the pomace from making Amarone or Recioto.
So it picks up some of that dried grape character.
It does. It enriches the base wine, gives it more body, deeper color, more tannin, and those complex dried fruit and spice notes. It sort of bridges the gap between regular Valpolicella and Amarone.
Very interesting how they leverage the process. Okay, Veneto is huge. What about other Italian spots? Sicily comes to mind for Passito.
Absolutely. Passito di Pantelleria from Sicily is completely unique. Comes from that volcanic island south of Sicily.
And it's all about the Zibibbo grape, right?
Yes, Zibibbo, which is Moscato dalla Sandia. And the production methods are really traditional, almost ancient feeling.
What's special about Pantelleria and Zibibbo?
The island's terroir is wild. Volcanic terraces, constant wind, intense sun. Perfect for Zibibbo. The grape itself has big bunches, golden berries, naturally high sugar and aromatics. Plus, it handles the heat and drought well.
And the drying process there.
They harvest late August or September. Lay the grapes on mats or shelves out in the sun and wind for maybe 2 to 4 weeks. Serious water loss. Major concentration.
Needs careful watching, I bet.
Absolutely. Producer skill is crucial to monitor drying, avoid problems. Then they gently press, ferment slowly. Often stops naturally because the sugar is so high. Sometimes they add a dash of fresh Zibibbo juice for freshness.
And the result? What's it like?
Intense aromas. Dried apricot, fig, date, honey, orange blossom, candied citrus, saffron, cinnamon. On the palate, sweet, rich, but that vital acidity keeps it balanced. Velvety texture, long aromatic finish. Zibibbo's aromatic nature is key.
Sounds heavenly. So connected to its place. Any other key Italian Apassimento wines?
Definitely. Recioto di Soave, also Veneto. Uses Garganega grapes, dried for a sweet, opulent white wine, still with good acidity. Notes of ripe white fruit, flowers, honey, almond finish.
Okay.
Then Sforzato di Valtellina up in Lombardy. Made from Nebbiolo, they call it Chiavenasca there. Partially dried grapes make a dry, structured red. High alcohol, firm tannins, red and black fruit, spice, earthy notes, that classic bitter almond.
So dry reds too, not just sweet.
Yes. And you find other Passito styles around Italy too. White Moscato Passito in Piedmont experiments with dry red Passitos elsewhere, seeking that concentration. Italy really covers the spectrum.
An amazing range. Let's look beyond Italy now. What about the rest of Europe? Greece.
Greece has a huge tradition, especially the Aegean Islands. The star is Vinsanto from Santorini.
Ah, Vincente, Assyrtiko grapes.
Primarily Assyrtiko, plus Idani and Aetheri, sun-dried for a week or two, then slow fermentation and often very long oxidative aging in oak barrels.
Oxidative aging, so exposure to air.
Yes, which gives it characteristic nutty caramel notes alongside the dried apricot, fig, honey, exotic spices. It's sweet, but Acidico's high acidity provides incredible balance. The name itself, Vinsanto, shows its historical importance.
And other Greek examples.
You find Passito wines in Crete, the Ionian Islands, often using local grapes, traditional methods, lots of variety in the aromatic profiles, citrus, floral, tropical, herbal.
Very cool. What about Spain? They do intense sweet wines too.
Spain has a massive history, especially Andalusia. The king is Pedro Ximénez PX from Jerez.
Oh, PX sherry. That's incredibly rich.
Incredibly, 100% Pedro Ximénez grapes, sun-dried on special solio mats for 1 to 3 weeks. Fermentation is only partial, then it's fortified with grape spirit.
And aged in that Solera system.
Right, that fractional blending system in stacks of barrels gives it that deep ebony color, intense aromas of stewed raisins, dates, figs, molasses, roast coffee, dark chocolate, plus those nutty caramel licorice notes from oxidation. Super sweet, dense, unctuous.
Unctuous is the word. Any other Spanish example?
Montemoriales also uses PX, sometimes unfortified. Malaga uses Moscatel and PX too. A strong tradition of sun-dried sweetness.
PX is unforgettable. Now, France. Not the first place I think of for Apassimento.
Less common, perhaps, but they have vin de paille straw wine.
Straw wine.
Yeah, mainly in the Jura and the Rhone. Carefully selected grapes, Chardonnay, Sauvignon and Jura, Grenache. Syrah may be in the Rhone, laid on straw mats or hung up in ventilated spots for months, often over winter.
Slow drying again?
Very slow drying, very slow fermentation. Jura vin de paille are complex, dried quince, fig, honey, spice notes, balanced acidity. Rhone versions reflect the red grapes, candied red black fruits, spice.
Intriguing. Any other European spots worth mentioning?
Hungary makes Passito wines distinct from Tokaji using ferment. Harslevelu, Sarga muscatuli, sweet, high acidity, stone fruit, honey, spice notes.
Okay.
Cyprus has Commanderia, ancient history there. Fortified sweet wine from sun-dried Mavro and Zanistri grapes. Dried fruit, caramel, spice, long oak aging.
Commanderia, right?
Right? And smaller scale stuff in Croatia, Slovenia, other parts of Greece, often using local grapes, traditional ways. It's quite widespread, really.
Amazing how this technique pops up everywhere, adapted to local conditions. Let's cross the ocean now. What about the New World? Is Apassimento happening in the US, Canada, Australia?
Oh, yes. It might not have the same long history, but there's definitely interest, adaptation, innovation happening.
In the US, where and what are they doing?
You're seeing producers in states like California, Washington, places with the right climate. A growing number are making Passito-style wines.
Following old world models, or doing their own thing?
A bit of both. Some are homages, some are more New World in style. Using different grapes too, Zinfandel, Syrah for reds, Muscat, Viognier, Chardonnay for whites, making everything from rich dessert wines to concentrated dry styles.
Interesting range. Canada is famous for ice wine, of course. Is that related?
You could say ice wine is a unique type of Apassimento. It's natural concentration on the vine, but through freezing, not drying.
Ah, the water freezes, leaving concentrated sugary juice.
Exactly. Different process, similar result, concentrated sugars and flavors. A natural Apassimento via cold.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Australia, other places.
Australia's warm, dry regions, Barossa, McLaren Vale are well-suited. They're doing Passito with Syrah for intense reds, Muscat for aromatic sweet wines, drying on the vine or post-harvest.
Right.
And you see pockets elsewhere, too. Chile, Argentina, South Africa, New Zealand. Smaller scale, exploring the technique with local grapes and terroirs, adapting it.
So it's a global phenomenon now in different forms. Let's go back to the grapes. We touched on this, but what makes a grape truly ideal for Apassimento? What are those key traits?
Okay, the key desirable traits. We mentioned thick skin, protects against drying out too fast, resists mold, rich in phenolics.
Got it.
High natural acidity, crucial for balance against all that sugar, keeps the wine fresh. Loose cluster structure helps air circulate, reduces rot risk, promotes even drying.
Right, airflow.
And intense, distinctive aromatic potential. You want aromas that will really shine through when concentrated.
Thick skin, high acid, loose bunches, good aromas. Can you recap some specific grape examples that tick these boxes? Reds first.
Sure. Reds. The Valpolicella crew, Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, thickish skins, good acid structure. Nebbiolo in Valtellina, high tannins, high acid. Warmer climate grapes like Garnacha, Monastrell, Syrah can bring richness and intensity.
And whites.
Belgianga and Suave Elegance, aromatics. Trebbiano and Malvasia, versatile for different styles. Zibibbo in Pantelleria, super aromatic, high sugar. Assyrtiko and Santorini, high acid, minerality, and of course Pedro Ximénez and Muscat, high sugar, very aromatic, used globally.
It's clear how the grape choice really dictates the potential style.
Absolutely. Thick skin, tannic reds lean towards structured Passito wines, dry or sweet. Aromatic whites with good acid are the base for those intense, sweet white Passitos.
And are people still experimenting, trying new grapes?
Constantly. Producers are always exploring less common varieties, tweaking drying methods, looking for unique expressions. It's an evolving art.
Okay, so the grapes are dried perfectly. What happens next? How does the actual winemaking differ from making wine with fresh grapes?
It's a whole different ballgame, really. The must is so concentrated, high sugar, high acid, low water, you have to adapt everything.
Starting with pressing, getting the juice out.
Yeah, pressing is tricky. The dried grapes are sticky, low yield. You need gentle pressure. Often hydraulic or pneumatic presses are used for slow, controlled extraction. You get this dense, super aromatic must.
And fermentation must be challenging with all that sugar.
Extremely. It's naturally slow, delicate. The high sugar actually stresses the yeast osmotic pressure, makes it hard for them to work.
So the winemaker has a big choice here, sweet or dry.
Exactly. Do you stop fermentation early to keep residual sugar for a sweet style? Or push it through to completion for a dry, structured wine like Amarone? Big decision. Temperature control is also vital. Keeps the yeast happy, shapes the aroma profile. Lower temps for fruity floral, slightly higher for more complexity.
And the yeast itself, do they need special strains?
Often, yes. While some use indigenous yeasts for terroir expression, for very high sugar musts, you often need selected lab yeasts known to tolerate those extreme conditions. Regular yeast might just give up.
Makes sense. What about aging? Is that different too?
Aging is really important for many Apassimento styles. Helps complexity develop, tannins soften and integrate. The choice of vessel matters hugely.
Stainless steel for freshness.
Right. Concrete for gentle oxygen exposure. Oak barrels, new, old, big, small, add spice. Vanilla, caramel notes, structure, aging potential. Even amphorae sometimes for purity and delicate oxygen exchange.
And how long do they age?
Varies enormously. Months to many years. Depends on the style, regulations. Longer aging softens tannins further, develops those tertiary notes, leather, tobacco, dried fruit, and oxidative notes like nuts and caramel in some styles.
It sounds like the winemaker needs to be part artist, part scientist, guiding this whole process.
Absolutely. The ecologist's role is central. Choosing the drying method, duration, controlling that tricky fermentation, selecting aging vessels and time. It requires sensitivity, intuition, and artistic vision to realize the potential in those dried grapes, truly crafting a noble wine.
Okay, we've got the process. Let's talk about the payoff. What are these wines like to taste? What's the sensory profile?
They're usually incredibly evocative. Intense aromas and flavors are the signature.
Like what specifically?
Dried fruits are almost always there. Raisins, figs, dates, dried apricots, warm spices, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, confectionery notes like caramel, molasses, rich honey.
Anything else?
Often cocoa or roasted notes, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, coffee, sometimes tobacco. And depending on the style and aging, balsamic hints, resins, herbs, or those nutty caramel oxidative notes.
A real tapestry of aromas. Does the grape variety still come through?
Oh, definitely. Aromatic grapes become even more intense, and the terroir can add mineral, earthy, or floral undertones beneath all that concentration.
And on the palate? Structure.
Yeah.
Balance.
Typically full-bodied, quite robust structure, often a feeling of richness or viscosity. But the key is balanced acidity, cutting through the richness or sweetness, integrated tannins in reds that are often softened by the process in aging.
So they aren't just heavy, there's elegance too.
Exactly. Even the sweetest ones should have enough acidity to feel vibrant, not cloying. The best have incredible complexity layers of flavor that unfold, and persistence, a long, satisfying finish. They really invite you to slow down and contemplate.
Sounds like wines you need to spend time with. Now, pairing them with food, this must be fun but maybe challenging. Where do we start?
It offers fantastic possibilities. The classic route for sweet styles, Recioto, Passito, Vinsanto, PX, is desserts.
Fruit desserts, chocolate.
Both work beautifully. Fruit tarts, spiced cakes, rich chocolate things. The wine's sweetness and fruitiness can complement or contrast wonderfully.
Sweet with sweet makes sense. What about savory pairings? Cheese, maybe?
Cheese is brilliant. Dry red Apassimento, like Amarone or Sforzato. Fantastic with aged hard cheeses, Parmesan, Grana Padano, aged Pecorino. The wine structure meets the cheese's intensity.
And sweet Apassimento with cheese.
That sweet, salty thing. Blue cheeses, Roquefort, Stilton, Gorgonzola, paired with a sweet Passito or PX. It's an amazing contrast. Highly recommended.
Love that combo. Any other savory ideas?
Well, a big structured Amarone can handle really rich dishes. Game meats, hearty stews, braised red meats with intense sauces. The wine has the power to match.
Right.
And a slightly more adventurous pairing. Foie gras with a sweet Vinsanto or PX. The wine's sweetness cuts through the richness of the foie gras beautifully.
Wow, some really luxurious pairings there. Any general tips for pairing Apassimento wines?
Serve the right temperature, crucial for these complex wines. Use a good glass. Think about the order if you're having multiple wines. Don't be afraid to experiment with matches and contrasts. And maybe learn a little about the wine and food story. It enhances the experience.
Great advice. Okay, let's wrap up by looking at the market. How are Apassimento wines viewed globally? What are the trends?
Generally, they're highly respected. Seen as high-quality, complex, often special occasion wines with great aging potential. They have a dedicated following.
But challenges were made for producers.
Definitely. That risk of rot during drying, the low yields, and sometimes communicating the value proposition, why they cost more to the consumer, those are ongoing hurdles.
What about the opportunities?
Huge opportunities. Their uniqueness attracts discerning drinkers looking for something special. The aging potential adds value for collectors. And there's that growing trend towards authentic wines with a strong sense of place and tradition, which fits Apassimento perfectly.
Are there specific market trends you're seeing?
Continued focus on the high-end, premium labels. Growing appreciation for the dry styles like Amarone and Sforzato, broadening their appeal beyond just dessert wines. More experimentation with different grapes and terroirs. And adopting technology carefully to improve quality and consistency.
Sounds like a dynamic category. So, as we finish this deep dive, what's the ultimate takeaway on Apassimento?
I think it's about this ancient, patient art of concentration, taking the essence of the grape and intensifying it through drying. It creates this incredible diversity of wines, sweet, dry, powerful, aromatic, all complex, rich, and often built to last. They offer these amazing sensory layers, dried fruits, spices, honey, chocolate, inviting contemplation. It's a technique rooted in tradition, but also embracing innovation, telling a story of time, dedication, and the magic of concentration. A truly unforgettable wine experience.
It really has been a fascinating journey into Apassimento, unpacking how drying grapes creates everything from sweet Sicilian Passito to powerful Amarone and everything in between.
Right.
I definitely had some aha moments, particularly understanding how those different drying methods really shape the wine and thinking about those surprising food pairings like the blue cheese.
Yeah, those can be revelations.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, we really encourage you to seek out some of these Apassimento wines. Try different regions, different styles, maybe even try one of those food pairings we talked about. There's so much flavor and history packed into those bottles.
Definitely worth exploring.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. In our fast-paced world, what can we still learn from these ancient, patient winemaking techniques? How do they keep enriching our enjoyment of wine today? And maybe think about what other seemingly simple, slow processes in life might hold unexpected depth and reward.
Good question.
Until our next deep dive, thanks for joining us. Cheers to the incredible world of wine.